Hey everybody, it's Party Elite back with some more Total Breakdown after a very long break, hoping to get things back on a regular schedule here. We return to the series, bringing it back from the dead, as it were, with the battle between the Vampire Counts of Aristodemos II and the Tomb Kings of Scrible. We begin, of course, with talk of composition and deployment as these two undead factions go head-to-head in the King's Cup tournament. The Vampire Counts are being led by the Red Duke up in the air. And the front line here consists of 2 units of Graveguard over here, and 2 units of Graveguard over here on either side of this obstacle. On either flank as well, we have a unit of Crypt Ghouls each, and above them we have these Fellbats flying above, hoping to shut down any ranged capabilities nice and early. Back here you can see we've got a White King atop a horse, and then we've got the Skeleton Spearmen, as well as a Vargulf in the back lines, hoping to push through and get a fair bit of damage done wherever possible. While off into these trees, you can see we've got a unit of Blood Knights ranked all the way up to triple gold, hiding, hoping to dive in and get some damage done. They are anti-large, and they can do a lot of work against enemy monsters. Meanwhile, the Tomb Kings over here are being led by none other than Cetra the Imperishable atop a War Sphinx, and the front line here consists of 5 units of Skeleton Spearmen, the one in the center being King Nahesh's Scorpion Legion, the Regiment of Renown. On either flank as well, you can see we've got a Tomb Prince each, and these guys are on horseback, while you can also see a large number of ranged units. We've got 5 units of Skeleton Archers, the 5th one in the middle over here being the Blessed Legion of Demonetization, and they are almost all being protected by these Skeleton Warriors, just in case any zombies get summoned to the field. We've got some Skeleton Warriors back there to hopefully keep those zombies at bay, or Skeleton Warriors if that might be the case. We also have these Necropolis Knights with halberds right back here in the center, anti-large and armor-piercing, and causing poisonous damage. They'll hopefully shut down any cavalry that gets a little too adventurous and decides to push back into these rear lines. So a lot of range capabilities coming in from the Tomb Kings, and again, hoping to use those Fellbats, I think, the Vampire Counts, to shut down those ranged units right away. But you can see, first things first, the Red Duke is actually pushing off to the side, hoping to scout out this region, I think, hoping to see if there are any enemy units tucked away in these trees, waiting to pounce from the side. It can be very threatening with the Tomb Kings bringing in a monster mash, as it might be, and you can see at the same time the rest of the army is forming up, pushing before, or rather in front of this obstacle over here, hoping to form up a nice straight line. And again, the Graveguard are quite capable, especially against units like Skeleton Spearmen from the Tomb Kings, and you can see the Tomb Kings are all pushing off to the side over here, getting ready, posturing, I think, in case the Red Duke decides to turn around and come in from the side. And at the same time, we've got all of these Vampire Counts units pushing forward, hoping to get engaged. Cetra the Imperishable decides to get involved, immediately getting very aggressive over here, hoping to dive into these Graveguard, and again, that is a good call, because the Graveguard, as soon as they engage the Skeleton Spearmen of the Tomb Kings, those Skeleton Spearmen are going to start falling apart. So take a look at this as Cetra the Imperishable decides to dive in and just toss these Graveguard back. Again, doing just a touch of damage, not absolutely obliterating them or anything, but getting a fair bit of hurt in there and throwing these guys back and slowing their approach down as well. And at the same time, you can see off to the side over here, we have all of these Skeleton Archers firing away, hoping to get some damage done to these Graveguard. But of course, the Graveguard do have silver shields, and that's going to keep them relatively safe despite all of that fire that's coming in. Back here at the same time, these Skeleton Spearmen are giving chase to Cetra the Imperishable as this Vargulf is pushing in as well. It's got a fairly hefty bit of armor-piercing damage, so it will provide some assistance against Cetra, but you can see Cetra almost instantaneously turns around and is trying to push right through these Graveguard over here, doing a fair bit of damage. You can see a beautiful charge there, a great angle, and at the same time then pushing right through and now pushing in towards these Crypt Ghouls as well. So a good job over there, and as that's happening, you can see the White King has actually pushed forward and is using Scab Scratch, I believe it's called, against these Skeleton Archers, immediately whittling them down, causing so much hurt, so much damage, dropping their health, dropping their morale. There's just about maybe 25% of health left over here, so these Skeleton Archers have already been taken care of, and the front lines have barely even engaged. At the same time, you can see the other Skeleton Archers and the Blessed Legion of Demonetization firing away at these Graveguard, again causing just a touch of damage. Of course, those silver shields are helping a fair bit, and you can see the Red Duke as well pushing in, hoping to get involved, just like Cetra has been involved over here on this left flank, causing a fair bit of damage. And now we've got the White King over here as well, diving into Cetra the Imperishable as these front lines are about to meet. You can see a touch of damage happening. Again, just that chip damage is going to make a big enough difference as these Graveguard as well push in towards those Skeleton Spearmen, and now the front lines are meeting. At the same time, we have the Red Duke over here looking for an opportunity to get involved, maybe use his breath ability, maybe use his charges to get rid of some of these ranged units back here, because they are going to cause a lot of damage. You can see we have a beautiful use of the breath, trying to take care of the Blessed Legion of Demonetization, and despite the attempt at dodging it. Unfortunately, they are being completely obliterated. 50% health lost over there, while you can see the front lines over here meeting as these skeleton spearmen countercharge into the Graveguard, and the Graveguard will do quite well with a melee attack of 24 and a melee defense of 36 against a melee attack of 16 and a defense of 36. The skeleton spearmen aren't going to be causing that much damage, so they're just here to hold the line, I think, while Cetra the Imperishable kind of dances around and does some damage. And meanwhile, back here you can see we've got the White King being occupied by the Tomb Prince, and the Tomb Prince is not having the best of times, but he is anti-large and armor piercing, so when push comes to shove, over time, that White King is going to start falling apart unless he gets several counter charges going back and forth. Of course, he's not going to have the best of times, and you can see at the same time over here, we've got the Red Duke using his abilities, using his magic to try and summon some skeleton warriors back here and shut down the Blessed Legion of Demonetization, while up front we've got these Fellbats as well, flying around, looking for an opportunity to get involved, while the Vargulf over here needs to push in and attack something or the other. You can see Cetra dives in, the Vargulf has to turn around and pull it back into safety because this is not an ideal engagement. At the same time, the Red Duke over here being fired upon by all of these skeleton archers, not an ideal situation. He decides to get involved against the Tomb Prince on that left flank, while over here you can see these Blessed Legion of Demonetization is getting completely obliterated as the Fellbats over here dive in to these skeleton archers as well. And in comes some more support for the Tomb Kings. Of course, they are getting some replenishment from the Realm of Souls, and back here you can see that Tomb Prince has almost been completely taken care of thanks to El Sif trying to use Neru's Incantation of Protection to keep him alive. And now you can see the Red Duke has been caught in a rampage situation over here thanks to the Curse of Juff, and so he decides to dive right into these halberds. The Necropolis Knights with their halberds dive in, Cetra the Imperishable dives in as well. We've got two Tomb Princes over here. That of course brings the Guardian trait with them as well. We've got all of that range support coming in as well, so the Red Duke finds himself in a terrible situation. The Curse of Jeff, of course, also reducing his melee attack significantly, and he is surrounded by a lot of danger. Meanwhile, you can see the front lines are most certainly going in favor of the Vampire Counts. They are chopping down those Skeleton Spearmen without any issue, of course, and back here as well, you can see the Fellbats are shutting down all of these Skeleton Archers and the Blessed Legion of Demonetization just to make sure they're not able to fire away at the Red Duke, and the Red Duke is able to get these zombies out to try and provide some support, and at the same time, we have these Blood Knights diving right through these Skeleton Warriors, trying to keep them preoccupied, trying to make sure that they're not able to get involved against these zombies. And then at the same time as well, the Red Duke uses the Invocation of the Heck to try and stay alive, but he is now crumbling. He is losing his health as he tries to escape this very precarious situation. We have these Skeleton Spearmen diving in, trying to hold, I think, Cetra, as well as these Necropolis Knights with halberds in place, but the Red Duke needs to leave. He needs to leave ASAP. He needs to get the hell out of there, but you can see he's in a terrible situation. Despite the Invocation of the Heck, all of that range support coming in, causing a lot of trouble for him. He needs to pull back a little bit further. Cetra continues to give chase, using Jeff's Incantation of Cursed Blades to increase the amount of damage he's causing as well, and in comes the disintegration, and down goes the Red Duke. That is going to be a terrible situation for the Vampire Counts, losing their leadership so early on, losing the ability to summon zombies and skeleton warriors. That is oh so crucial when coming in with an army like this, and at the same time, as if adding salt to the wound, you can see we have some Ushapti being summoned from the Realm of Souls right here on this left flank, adding more strength to that left flank that already has all of these Tomb Princes and Cetra the Imperishable as well. Meanwhile, over here you can see these Blood Knights are just ping-ponging between all of these units, now pushing into these Skeleton Archers back here again, trying to eliminate all of that range support, while the Fellbats as well getting personally involved, trying to shut down all of the range support. That should have been done a little bit sooner, I think, just to try and take care of all that range support that ultimately took care of the Red Duke. Now Cetra the Imperishable, you can see, is diving in through the front lines once again, trying to provide some assistance to these Skeleton Spearmen, and that is a great call. You want to try and get Cetra the Imperishable, especially atop that War Sphinx, diving through all of these infantry units, because the rest of this Tomb King army is not equipped to deal with Graveguard. They have no choice but to send Cetra sort of dive bombing, as it were, and ping-ponging between all of these Graveguard units. So great call over there. Meanwhile, over here you can see the Vargulf is trying to deal with these Necropolis Knights with halberds, trying to get rid of that very threatening unit, but of course they are anti-large and armor-piercing. That Vargulf is being tossed around, while the Ushapti as well getting personally involved against these Crypt Ghouls on this left flank, trying to win that left flank as quickly as possible so they can all push in towards the right flank over here, where the Tomb Kings are falling apart. Cetra does manage to cause a fair bit of damage to these Graveguards, of course, but you can see on that right flank, these two units of Graveguards have completely obliterated the Skeleton Spearmen and are now able to push in for a nice envelopment maneuver, but Cetra the Imperishable is trying to get in the way, trying to intercept as many of these Graveguard as possible, turning around and pushing in towards these guys as well. Again, the sheer weight of that War Sphinx is enough to throw these guys around on the march. The Skeleton Archers, meanwhile, have been completely shut down. They're not able to get shots off. Great work there. And back here you can see the Blood Knights now engaged against the Necropolis Knights with halberds, using Neru's Incantation of Protection to try and keep them alive. The Vargulf over here as well, beating away at those very same Necropolis Knights, trying to rid the battlefield of that very threatening unit. And you can see now, though, all of these skeleton archers are able to fire away at the Varghulf, and keep an eye on that Varghulf's health as well, as Cetra the Imperishable decides to push in to this engagement as well to try and get rid of this very threatening unit. That Varghulf is going to take a lot of hurt back here as well. These Blood Knights trying to pull back into safety. We've got the White King diving in to try and provide some support, but that Varghulf is not having a good time, surrounded by not only these Necropolis Knights with their halberds, the Tomb Prince, Cetra the Imperishable, and all of that range support, despite these Graveguard able to push in, and that excellent use of Scab Rash once more to try and cause some damage over here. You can see that Varghulf is losing health and morale very quickly, and these Graveguard as well not doing all that well in critical binding. Despite just being up against some skeleton archers and some skeleton warriors, they were just a little bit too badly bruised, I think, when Cetra was ping-ponging between them, that they're still not fully recovered from that onslaught. And over here as well, you can see the Ushabti push in towards these Graveguard, and again, just trying to eliminate this unit of Graveguard. They are anti-infantry and armor-piercing the Ushabti, but they are about to die out, thankfully, for the Vampire Counts. They're just trying to get some damage done before that does happen. You can see the Varghulf over here very low on health right now, crumbling away as well. So the Varghulf is almost taken care of, while back here you can see the White King is in a trouble situation as well. That Tomb Prince is right in there with Neru's Incantation of Protection. We've got Cetra the Imperishable chasing after these Blood Knights, and these Blood Knights you can see as well pushing in after the Varghulf to try and shut down, I think, the Tomb Prince over here, as well as some of these ranged units. But that Varghulf is, again, in a terrible situation, still crumbling, not able to get away from that. In comes Cetra as well, ultimately getting the Varghulf to completely disintegrate and die off over here. Great work focusing in on that Varghulf and eliminating what could be a very dangerous unit, especially against the overall pitiful infantry that the Tomb Kings brought to the field today. So unfortunately for the Vampire Counts, not only did the Red Duke drop off right at the beginning of the battle, but down goes the Varghulf as well. A terrifying situation for the Vampire Counts and the Blood Knights as well. Very low on health right now, and there is no Invocation of Nehek to keep them alive. There is no support in any form of magic in there to keep them alive. You can see over here the White King is preoccupied with the Tomb Prince. We've got some of these Graveguard able to push through now that the front lines have mostly been taken care of. The Blessed, or rather the King Nehesh's Scorpion Legion still managing to hold the line, keep these Graveguard busy, but you can see we've got all of those skeleton archers dying off, completely faltering. These skeleton warriors as well beginning to crumble and give up on the fight. The Graveguard are coming out on top. These Crypt Ghouls as well pushing in towards these skeleton archers, hoping to finish them off as they are crumbling. And the Blood Knights you can see here going toe-to-toe against Cetra the Imperishable, but in comes the Curse of Juff from this Tomb Prince over here, causing rampage for multiple units and also bringing in that reduction in melee attack. So this could swing the battle still in favor of the Tomb Kings. You can see Cetra the Imperishable has taken a fair bit of damage. He needs to pull away from this engagement against these anti-large Blood Knights and dive right down this line over here. Perhaps eliminate some of these Graveguard, ping-pong between these Graveguard and these Graveguard over here, then loop back around, maybe chase in after some of these Graveguard back here. The White King as well. Cetra the Imperishable right now is literally fighting his counter over here in the form of these anti-large Blood Knights. So a terrible call over there, but you can see back here we've got these skeleton archers crumbling as they are firing away, I think, at these Blood Knights, hoping to rid the battlefield of that anti-large capability. And you can see these Crypt Ghouls as well using their poison to keep Cetra the Imperishable slow as he dives into this engagement over here, and again within range of his Tomb Princes, giving him that Guardian trait benefit, of course, as he tosses some of these units around, throwing around some of these skeleton warriors as well. A little bit of friendly fire happening over there as these Blood Knights now come around from the side and dive right into these skeleton archers, throwing them back and trying to completely disintegrate that unit as well, of course. Over here as well, you can see Cetra the Imperishable trying to eliminate some of these Graveguard as well. Again, right next to that Tomb Prince, the White King decides to dive in and get involved, but he's in a precarious situation, very low on health, very low on morale as well. He is crumbling, so he might just die off right now, but you can see all of these Graveguard have been freed up, and they are pushing in rather aggressively alongside these Crypt Ghouls to try and shut down what's left of these Skeleton Spearmen, as well as this Tomb Prince over here. You can see the Blood Knights still engaged against Cetra the Imperishable, and he does have good binding, or stable binding now, and he is coming out on top against the Blood Knights, but again, over time, if he stays engaged against an anti-large unit, he's just not going to have a good time, especially as all of these Graveguard just swarm in and try to rid the field of these Skeleton Spearmen. Now, I do apologize for the frame rate drops that are happening right now. Completely inexcusable considering I have an i9 processor and a GTX 1080, but as that's happening, as my graphics card seems to be crumbling away, so too do these Skeleton Spearmen, and now we're pushing into the Tomb Prince next, and that is an absolutely good call. That is the way to go. You want to get rid of the Tomb Prince, because the Tomb Prince is keeping the Guardian trait alive on Cetra the Imperishable, keeping him relatively safe thanks to that physical resistance. So in they come, all swarming around the two units over here. We're going to speed it up a notch because this frame rate is absolutely killing me. But you can see we have a full surround around the Tomb Prince. He is crumbling away. He is losing health very quickly. His morale is extremely low, and as the Tomb Prince dies and gets pushed away from Cetra the Imperishable, he is, of course, not under the protection of the Guardian trait, and in just a moment's time, you'll see this Tomb Prince does ultimately give up on the fight, completely dies off, and Cetra the Imperishable has no choice but to perish and the vampire counts win the day. The Tomb Kings did a wonderful job of taking the Red Duke out of the picture nice and early. With leadership out of the way and the inability to summon countless zombies and skeleton warriors into the range-heavy back lines, you'd think it would be an easy victory for the Tomb Kings. Unfortunately, what seemed like a mismanaged Cetra ultimately led to the downfall of our mummified friends. Cetra did not use his bulk and strength to toss graveguards around, instead opting to go toe-to-toe against the anti-large Blood Knights. The Tomb Princes also did not stay close enough to Cetra in many cases, allowing their Guardian trait to go to waste. A good fight and great play from both commanders, but at the end of the day, an outnumbered vampire count force came out on top. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content and keep sending in those battle replays. I do think it's one of the best ways to learn, and it's always nice to highlight such amazing battles from the community. I'd also like to thank all of my patrons for supporting the channel on a month-to-month basis, making a huge difference in keeping the channel alive and running smoothly. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.